What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Kinda Tired Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. You thought I had no energy, but you were wrong! I ran out of breath, though. Alright, this story's called Shaming French Witches with a Children's Song. First, a little backstory first. I'm an Irish-American woman living in southern the main francophone country. I am also perfectly bilingual in French and English. English is my first language, but I've been learning French since I was about 10. I'm now 34 and have been in the original francophone country for 5 years. Suffice to say, my French is basically flawless at this point. Now, in this francophone country, there is a subset of the population that is less than kind of foreigners. Now, I work in a steel foundry machine shop, and my company has another American woman in the office staff, who is also one of my close drinking buddies. Because we both, at the time, lived in the same district of our city, we often rode the same bus home. Because she is not quite as fluent in French, we often speak in English when together. It's easier for most subjects, anime, clothing, esoteric topics, etc., and all that. Well, one day, this didn't go over very well with two older women. We had gotten on near our work site and had taken a seat, happily discussing a new anime that had come out on Crunchyroll a few months before. They must have been on since the beginning, as the bus originated from a small village on the other side of the foundry from the city. 10 minutes after boarding, we began to hear them. Now, remember, despite speaking English to my friend, we both understand French perfectly. And oh boy, the comments. Now, it's been a bit over 2 years, so I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it all basically came down to them being jerks. Speak French, you are in the francophone country, jerks.
Listen to these stupid Americans. I wish they would actually learn the language. You know how they think, always need to be the center of attention. They have the IQ of an oyster.
Sorry, I'm turning German. A particularly French way of saying stupid.
Surprised they undress like a pair of €2.
Insert derogatory term for a specific kind of worker. This went on for the entire journey. Now, I have just as low an opinion of most American tourists. I'm from a US West Coast state known for being green and weird. And while we are a friendly bunch, I often joke about how folks from a state known for Apple and the film industry are the most invasive species in my state. And so, I take exception to being compared to garbage tourists. I'm also a petty jerk, and both me and my friend knew these women did not speak English, as we had tested the theory by calling them bitter old dingbats and other insults that don't translate easily into French. So we hatched a plan. We had basically had enough, and wanting to pick up some pastries from downtown, I am a total pushover when it comes to eclairs, decided we would shame these two in the most obnoxious way possible. As my friend pressed the button to request to stop, I quietly turned and faced the two witches. In perfect region-specific accented French, I say, I hope you two have something else to talk about after we get off. I really do enjoy being the center of attention. The looks of shock and horror on their faces were priceless. They were talking loud enough that the dead could hear. This was where my friend joined in.
I guess as dumb American
derogatory terms,
we should start learning French. Say, I know a song we can practice with.
As the bus stopped and we stood up, singing Frère Jacques at the top of our lungs, loud enough that everybody could hear, we got off the bus, still singing as the bus pulled out, the driver grinning like an idiot and several other passengers laughing as these two women tried to hide their embarrassment. Pretty certain a guy who was sitting behind us had joined in the song. We got eclairs at one of my favorite local places, which was still a ways from our homes, but damn, the walk was worth those pastries. Moral of the story, don't assume that the foreigners speaking a different language don't understand you. Edit, just for the record, the reason I speak a specific version of French is because my tutor comes from Bordeaux, so I have a lot of her colloquialisms. Likewise, what I did was not illegal, just obnoxious. Edit 2. Another for the record, my written French is relatively horrible. Wow. No shame in admitting my translations in the comments will probably look weird. I'm still trying to figure out where colloquial crosses into writing when it comes to the language. Yo, I love stories like that. My cousin, she has a story like that from when she was on the bus. I think I told it on Voicey here, but basically, so she's fluent in English and Urdu, and people were talking crap about her in a seat adjacent to her so she could hear everything that was being said, and then after a few minutes of hearing them talk trash about her, she was like, oh, by the way, I can understand you in like perfect Urdu. I don't remember exactly what she told me what was said on either parts, but it's still really cool that it happened. And I'm curious, has anyone else had an experience like this where someone assumed you didn't know a language and they talked about you in said language that they thought you didn't know, and then you make sure they know that you do know the language that they didn't know you knew? Also, if you have a chance to giddy clears and walk with a buddy and talk about stuff like anime, then do it. It's worth it, man. This story's called Call Me a Baseball Pitcher? Have fun getting home. This happened a few years ago when I was in school. I was friends with this guy, who we'll call Dan. Dan and I were pretty close. We're the people who almost dated but never did. But I went to his house a couple times. He lived even further than me. The journey home was about 1.5 hours for him by bus. Suddenly, he stopped talking to me for no reason, and stopped waiting for me as we used to take the bus home together. I asked him what the issue was. Apparently, a girl he was talking to thought I was pretty clingy, and didn't trust him when hanging around me. We then had a huge fight over this, ending with him calling me a baseball pitcher, amongst other things, especially stuff he knew I was sensitive about. I then obviously hated him, and was going to let it go, until a week or so later. I went to class, and there was his travel card. It had clearly fallen out of his pocket. I simply placed it in between textbooks that were stacked behind me. Dan wouldn't have been able to get home without the card, and I assumed he didn't have his debit card on him because he never does. He then wouldn't be able to replace it for a week at least, which would change the transport cost from free to double his week's pocket money. I overheard him telling someone the next day that his mom was mad that he lost it, and he had to stay around school for over an hour as his mom had to finish work, then collect him. It wasn't a huge inconvenience, but it felt very good that it had made his day a little worse. Edits by talking to, I assumed there was some sort of romantic intentions. However, according to mutuals, nothing happened between them. When he stopped talking to me, this was completely sudden. He talked to me at break, and then I didn't see him at lunch. And I waited for him after school as always, as we would always catch the bus home. I ended up waiting for 15 minutes before I assumed he'd left earlier. However, in the past, he'd always have texted me if he had to leave quickly. This caused me to wait longer for the bus and be home later, which is why I thought this revenge was particularly apt. The travel card would only have a small bit of money on it to be used on transport, and as soon as a new one was ordered, the old one would be invalid and the money would be on the new one. Fellers and fellatresses, if a peep you're trying to talk to gets all weird about your friends, I don't think they're the most mature individual if they can't see that, friendship is one thing and something else is something else. Personally, I'm just kinda naturally flirty because it's a lot of fun, but that is dramatically toned down to the point of non-existence if I'm in a relationship. So both parties gotta be mature and there's gotta be some sort of trust there. Just don't be controlling, man. You're gonna ruin friendships. And that guy, he had to wait for his mom to pick him up after school. That's pretty embarrassing. Alright, this story's called Tell Me to Cover Up in My Own Yard? Be beholden to my thighs every summer. So this is more of an annual revenge thing. About 5 years ago, a greedy councilman put up 3 two-story apartments next door to our house. One of these has a direct view of our pool area, and a grouchy woman and her husband moved into it. Any hoot, as we have done in the 15 summers before they got there, we all went for an afternoon swim. The woman was on her balcony and made a huge dramatic fuss about going back inside and closing her curtains. She then screeched at her husband when he tried to go outside. It's not like we were indecent or anything, just in our swimsuits. We laughed about it and continued having a nice afternoon at the pool while she roasted inside. A few days went by and I decided it was too hot to be inside and went for a dip. I was in the middle of uni and this was the only time I'd leave the house between assignments and tests. Now, I do not have a body that stops traffic. I am a regular plump human whose Dorito-loving habits have begun to show around the lower body area. I take off my sarong and jump into the pool. After a few minutes, I sense someone watching me. Look up and find a man on the balcony smoking and staring right at me. I make a bit of an aggressive, "What?" gesture and he scurries back inside, only to return with a woman in tow. The conversation went something along the lines of,
Excuse me, could you not swim when my son is out here smoking? He just lost his job and this is the time he'd normally smoke, and you're out here naked and distracting him.
Ew, he's the age of my dad. He can smoke on your front balcony, and I've lived here for, at the time, 15 years, so you can't blame me for being here naked, which I'm not. I'm swimming.
I'm just asking you to be considerate, okay?
At this point, the grown-ass man-baby was looking smug. If you don't like it, then move. And I continued swimming. They stood there for another 5 minutes before once again going inside and closing the sliding patio doors and curtains. Also, I was not naked or indecent. I wear full swimsuits because I'm a little insecure about my belly. See paragraph about the Doritos. I told my parents, and the next day my mom joined me in the pool to show them, and I quote, "What real traumatizing thighs look like." But that got me thinking though. I could make their summers a living hell if closing all their curtains was how they'd go about seeing us in the pool. So now, every summer, weather permitting, I go out and flash my thighs for a few hours in the afternoon and have them roast up in their apartment. It's been 5 years of this, and I will continue doing this until the day I leave home. Edits, I want to thank everyone who's giving me ideas to be even more petty. My mom and I are getting a good chuckle out of it, and I am now on Amazon looking for the hairy dude swimsuit. Also, you guys have been so wholesome about this, my Dorito thighs give thanks for the acceptance. The audacity of these people, okay? It's one thing if they're like in their front yard, maybe, and that's a big old maybe. But at this point, the apartment people should be checking themselves because they're the ones who are peeping on people in the swimming pool. That's a little weird. They can mind their own business. Also, OP, you continue to flash your gloriously beautiful Dorito thighs, okay? Don't let anyone stop you. I mean, within reason. There's certain places you shouldn't. Alright, this story's called Revenge on a 16-year-old Son Who Spent All His Money on Weed. I wasn't a bad dad. He turned out pretty good. Journeyman electrician, works at a Fortune 500 company. Anyway, when he was 16, a long time ago, he needed $30 for a school trip. I gave it to him several days in advance. The night before the school function, he told me he'd spent it and needed another $30. I finally forced it out of him that he'd bought weed. I don't have a problem with that. If you put all the things I've smoked in a pile, it would be bigger than a house. But now, he needed more money. So I said, okay, you go with me to the store and do what I ask. I'll give you more money and even throw in a little extra. He agreed, having pretty much no choice. I grabbed something out of the kitchen on the way out. We went to Target, kind of an upscale joint around here for simple crap, but before we got out of the car, I told him the deal. You have to wear a hat made of this aluminum foil and you can't talk to anybody. If somebody says something or asks you a question, just mumble, "I can't take it again. Not like last time." He agreed. I made the hat, included a little point on the top and 2 flaps that covered his ears. I put kind of a tail at the back. It looked perfect. I walked around the store and he had to stay at least 10 feet away so people wouldn't think we were together. I heard him mumble unintelligent crap a few times as people stared and walked past. He never broke character and walked through nearly every section. electronics, toys, men's and women's clothing, auto, pharmacy, food. It took nearly 45 minutes for me to grab the 3 things we went for. I gave him the cart and enough money to pay for it and watched as he went through the line. When we got back to the car, I said screw it, he did a good job, and gave him $50. Edited to add, I thought about making him buy a pack of condoms, a raw chicken, and some Vaseline, but I just got what we went there for. Engine oil, a head of lettuce, and some eye drops. Edited to add the second. For all wondering about how much damage his psyche experienced, he graduated with honors, became a licensed journeyman electrician, and is employed by a world-renowned company. This happened nearly 20 years ago. He now has 3 lovely kids of his own. This might also clear up some of the pricing of weed comments. He's the kid who could name all the planets in order when he was 3 years old. He knew I'd give him the money whether he did anything or not. I think he accepted the terms to get the little more and maybe to have a good time with Dad to make up for spending it on weed. I am quite proud of him. That's an adorable story. That's some decent parenting in my opinion, okay? Because you know what? Yes, his kid did smoke weed. However, it's a good thing that he eventually told his dad, and his dad didn't freak out on him. Now, I'm not saying, yeah, let your kid smoke weed, but, you know, if they do something that it's not necessarily good, but they at least tell you about it, then I feel like you're doing something right. Unless they're telling you because you don't care, but you do care. That's what we're talking about here. Alright, so this story's called Jackass is Sitting in My Pre-Booked Seat? No problem. No problem at all. My country's trains have a slightly infamous issue with people wrongfully taking seats that have been reserved in advance. When you book a seat, you always get to pick your seat when booking online. Your name, or reservation number if you want to stay anonymous, gets displayed over your seat. There were some issues with the reservations not coming up properly, which eventually got resolved. But people got used to the chaos of having to duke it out to get your correct seat. In response, the railway company started introducing customer service agents. In reality, these staff are part ticket inspectors, part security. This story takes place about 1 week after these agents were introduced. So I boarded my train, returning to the city I live in after visiting my family for the weekend. The train was about halfway along its route, and there were a lot of empty seats. This is important. When I arrived at my seat, my name was above it. I found it occupied by a dude about halfway through a 6-pack of beer. I told him that was my seat, and asked if he could move to one of the many unoccupied seats on the carriage. He refused and started cursing me out of it, saying he got there first and I could sit in one of the unoccupied seats, generally being a bit of a bastard, throwing his empty cans out into the aisle. At this point, I could have given one of the customer service guys a heads up and have them persuade the guy to move to one of the empty seats. But honestly, that didn't feel satisfying enough. Cue petty revenge. Looking above his head, I could see that the seat next to him was booked from 3 stops down the line. I also knew that 2 stops down the line was when most commuters got on the train. I plonked myself down in the other pre-booked seat directly next to this dude, rather than sitting in one of the unreserved seats. The jackass in my seat settled back down with his cheap beer and started blasting music from his phone. 2 stops down the line, the train fills up completely. Standing room only from then on. The stop after that, the lady who booked the seat I was currently sitting in got on. I explained the situation to her, and together we grabbed one of the customer service dudes. I got my seat, the lady got her seat, and Jackass got to stand outside the pisser for the 2 hours left in the journey. Good one. I was wondering where they were going to go with this, but they waited until there was no more sitting room left. Smart. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.